Okay, and this one we're gonna do a really hard concept. So it just takes a lot of practice, and make sure you use your house, and eventually you'll be okay and you'll get it. But it's a little hard for a lot of adults to understand. So let's kind of work through this first one. We want to know 1/10 of 5/10. So we've done this with whole numbers. So decimals is pretty similar. I'm going to put this in a house, but I'm going to use a house to help me. Now if I want 1/10 of, remember we've talked about this is like a knife. It slices and dices your numbers and makes them smaller. Now I'm doing 1/10, so that's one place value. So you need to ask yourself, if I want to make this decimal smaller, would I move it to the left and make it 5 wholes? Or would I move it to the right and make it 5/100ths? Yeah, 1/10 would go here and it would become 5/100ths. So 1/10 of 5/10 is, notice is my equal sign, 5/100ths, okay? Now if I did 10 times that, well, we just worked through this. So I'm gonna ignore this for a minute and I'm gonna start back with this 5/10. So if I want 10 times, remember that makes your number get bigger. It makes it add more place values. So would I move to the left and make it 5 wholes, or would I move it to the right and make it a 5/100th? Yeah, I would go to like 5 whole dollars. So this is like I had 5 dimes, and if mom had said, I'm gonna give you 10 times that, now you would have $5. If I was making it smaller, I would start with 5/10, and your mom would come and say, you've been naughty, I'm gonna 10th your allowance, I'm gonna make it smaller. So then she would just give you like 5 pennies, 5/100ths. Okay, so let's try it again, and let's do it with some different numbers now. We're gonna use some whole numbers in here. And we're starting with this right here. What is 1/10 of 1 3/10? So let's write that in our house. 1 3/10. Now remember, we're tenthing it. Remember, that means I think a fruit ninja. I'm gonna slice this number up and make it less place values, make it smaller, okay? So let me do that. What is 1/10 of 1 3/10? Okay, so ask myself, do I want this number to become bigger or smaller? If I want it to become bigger, I'm gonna shift this to the left, but I'm gonna 10th it, so I'm actually gonna shift everything to the right. So everything's gonna move one place value to the right. So this 1 is gonna come here, and this 3 is gonna become here. So instead of 1 3/10, it becomes 13/100ths. So what I did is I shifted the place value to the left to make this not like $1 now is what it started out with. Now it's like 13 cents. So that makes it smaller. We could say, if we added a 0 here, we could say it was $1.30, and now it's 13 cents. 13 cents is definitely smaller than $1.30. Okay, let's look at the last one on this page, and then we're gonna do some like word problem that are really confusing. What is 10 times 13 3/10? Okay, so let's ignore this. We're gonna do 13 3/10. Okay, now we're gonna do 10 times that. So am I gonna shift everything to the left or shift everything to the right? Yeah, the left is gonna make it bigger, so I need to move this 3 here. Now this is in the units. Remember that units can go up to the billions. It just means wholes. So I could have 1 whole, 13 wholes, 130 wholes, 1,300 wholes, 1 million wholes. It doesn't matter. That unit's that special place that you can put as many numbers as you want in it. Now the 10th, remember, can only have 1. The 100th can only have 1, okay? So I'm gonna shift the 3 over there, and this becomes 133. So let's add a 0 and think money. It was $13.30. Mom comes and says, oh, you cleaned your room. Good job. I'm gonna make your allowance 10 times what it was. So instead of $13.30, you now have $133. That is definitely bigger than that $13 we started with. So it is 10 times, okay? And notice I'm saying what is, that is represents your equal sign, and I'm setting you up for what I'm fixing to show you next. So I could say 133 is 10 times more than 13 and 3/10. I could say 13 hundredths is 1/10 of 1 and 3/10. Okay, now let me go to my next page and let me show you what I was setting you up for. Because we see these all the time and we get so confused. Here is your saving grace. Write an equation. If you will write an equation, this will not mess you up. Because I see so many kids see 10 times and they're like, oh, 10 times that's 32. Well, let me write an equation and show you what this looks like. Let me do it a different color too, that way you can see what I'm talking about. 3 and 2/10. Now remember on the other page I told you is your equal sign. 3 and 2/10 is 10 times what number? Let me plug 32 in there because I'm sure that's what you thought the answer was at first. So if I say 32 and do 10 times that, oh my gosh, that's so easy. 32 times 10 would be 320. Is that what this number says? No, it's smaller. So you gotta flip your thinking. Whatever number you're starting with, you're gonna make it into 10 times that. So the number we start with has to be smaller because we're multiplying by 10, okay? So you're kind of thinking backwards and thinking, okay, this number right here has to be smaller. So what I would do is I would use my answer choices and go from there. So if I did 32, that would be there. And I did 10 times that, that would become 320. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so A is not good. Let's go to B. 32 hundredths. Now if I make it 10 times, I'm going to make it bigger. So I'm going to shift everything to the left. So this 3 is going to come here. And then my 2 is going to shift here. So it becomes 3 and 2/10. Look, that's what I have. That's what I'm looking for. So this is probably going to be my guy right here. Let's check the next one though, just for practice. So I have 3 and 2/10, and I would make it 10 times that. So I'm going to shift everything to the left. So this 2 is going to hop over here, and it becomes 32. Is that 32? No. Okay. Now this I know is dumb, because it's bigger than my answer. And if I say 320 and do times 10, it's not going to be a smaller number. It's going to be 3,200. Okay? I could have got rid of this one also because they were equal, and I know if I do times 10, it's not going to give me something that's equal to that, okay? So make sure that you set up this equation or you're going to pick the wrong answer, I promise you. All right, let's look at the next one. Now I'm going to be like, where was your equation? Okay, so let's set up our equation. Does anybody see a dumb answer we can get rid of? Yeah, A. Because how is 58 hundredths going to be equal to 58 hundredths if I take a tenth of it? If I do anything to it, times 10 or 10, it's going to change it. So this is silly. All right, so now let's set up our equation. 58 hundredths is, remember that's your equal sign, 1/10 of what number? Okay, now when I tenth something, I'm going to make it smaller. So does this number here need to be bigger or smaller than your answer? Yeah, it needs to be bigger because you're going to tenth it. You're going to make it smaller to equal this. So let's start with 58. So if I have 58 and I tenth it, am I going to move it to the left or to the right? Yeah, to the right. So this 8's going to jump here, and then this 5 will move where the 8 was. So this is 5 and 8/10. Does it match 58 hundredths? No, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, let's try our next answer choice. Boop, boop. This, 58 thousandths. Now this is a 5th grade number, but I just threw it in here because I want to show you. Oops, I wrote that wrong. I want to show you what you might see sometimes. And so this is a thousandth. Okay, now I'm going to make it a tenth of that. So remember, I'm going to make it smaller. So I'm going to shift everything this way. So there's no way that's going to be it because this is already smaller, so that's not going to work. Okay, let's do the last one. 5 8/10. I want to do a tenth, so I'm going to make it smaller. So I'm going to shift everything to the right. So this 5 is going to move where the 8 is, and the 8's going to move where the 5 is. They're going to move on over. Let me get you where you can see that. Look, I have 58 hundredths. They match. So here's my answer. So notice I have to start with a bigger number in order to tenth it and get a smaller number. So I got to reverse my thinking. I think, oh, I'm tenthing it, but the number has to be bigger so I can tenth it and get the smaller number. And then up here, we did 10 times. So remember, my number had to be smaller, and you're conditioned to think 10 times is bigger, but you have to start with the smaller number in order to get that 10 times in, okay? So you got to kind of flip your thinking on these. But here's your tip. Write those equations. That will save you, because when you plug these answers in, you can see how dumb they look when you have that equation set in there. All right, just keep practicing. I promise you'll eventually get it. You may be 90, but you'll eventually get it.